Chapter 5. Hi. How are you guys doing? Larry bellowed out as he was just about to leave the Kmart. Being a large fan of the newest and finessed fishing tackle and poles, Larry had decided to make a quick stop at the store before heading home. "We're doing good," Malachi responded as his family's longtime friend, and Nicole's boss, was passing them within the store. "What brings you out so late, Larry?" For the most part, Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, and Angel had only gone out, after their 10 o'clock breakfast, for the sake of getting away from the house. The occasion was even recommended by Malachi's wife. Kmart's newest video game seemed to be a choice over flying aimlessly in no particular direction. "This new fishing rod," the older man responded as he held the pole off to the side and then made it look as though he was pulling in a large catch. With this gimmick, using both hands, he even acted out the reeling of the line. $80. They're getting cheaper these days. Cheaper? Ronnie thought to himself. Well, I guess that's why Mom and Dad never got us into the sport. Ronnie commented. Well, Larry said as he put one hand on Ronnie's shoulder, this here is just a more expensive brand. There are other rods for under $20. Then, as the police chief put the pole back into the shopping cart, he looked at his watch. Well guys, I better let you go for now. My wife's gonna think that I found a new date. All right Larry. Malachi answered, you have a good eventing. With this, Mayachi then shook Larry's hand and smiled. You too bud. Bye now. Seconds later, Larry quickly hustled to a checkout line as Malachi, Ronnie, and Eddie went on their way. Hey guys. Angel spoke up, I'll catch up with you in a moment. Without waiting for a response, Angel immediately darted off into another direction, as he had simultaneously watched over his own shoulder, to see that Eddie, Ronnie, and Malachi had continued on their own way. In part of agreeing to his obedience to his grandfather, or let's say, to prove his obedience to his grandfather, Angel was instructed by Miguel to either disrupt or destroy something that the Declue family held close to their heart. Hey Larry. Angel called out loudly as he followed the old man out the electronic automatic sliding doors. Turning, as he heard his name, Larry quickly made eye contact with Angel and then quickly smiled as he held his new fishing rod over his shoulder. Hi there. Angel, right? Yes sir, Angel said as he continued to walk up to Larry's side. I was wondering. The 14-year-old continued. If by chance, if you might be afraid of heights. Larry was a bit dumbfounded by the off-the-wall question. Without even being able to come up with an immediate answer, Larry just slightly smiled at the teenager as he attempted to process the question in his mind. What do you mean, if I'm scared of heights? He asked as his mind seemed to get lost within the question. Quickly, to make sure that no one else was within the parking lot, Angel quickly looked around then and then firmly grabbed the older man's arm. Rather than buying a fishing pole, you should have found yourself a set of wings. With this, Angel instantly projected himself, and the police chief up to heights that left Craig looking like just one single dim light far below. Then, as Angel looked into the face of his prey, he could see, by the moon's light, that the man was unconscious. Now, holding the limp body of nearly 200 pounds high into the air, by just one hand, he loudly screamed into the distance. Grandfather. Does this make you happy? Then, just as he finished speaking, he threw the motionless body as hard as he could into the western direction, allowing it to plummet back to the earth. Hey Malachi. Look at this Monopoly game. It's got game pieces that ours doesn't have, Ron said as he knelt down to a lower shelf. Malachi, Ronnie, and Eddie had all stopped by the board games as they were headed towards the video games located just 2 aisles further. And here are the blank Yahtzee pads that we need, Eddie said as he reached up above Ronnie to the highest shelf. Then, as Eddie held a pack of 3 of score sheets for Yahtzee, he looked over towards Malachi as he was holding a different item in his hands. Turning to face Eddie, he held a deck of cards that had Power Rangers figures printed on their backs. Well, tell you what guys. Let's get that new Monopoly game and those score pads. Then we'll go look at the video games, Malachi said. Who knows, maybe Angel's over there already. Then, just moments later, the three of them continued on their way. After about 10 minutes, and with an estimate of about $75 worth of games and computer equipment, the guys were just about to head over to the checkout counter when suddenly Angel came around the corner of the aisle. "Hey guys. You should see the hoverboards over here," Angel continued as he pointed into the direction that he had just come from. Unless it pertained to computer equipment, software, or hardware including all of the games, Malachi never really enjoyed or took part in most of the high-tech items such as hoverboards, carry-along DVD players, of which connected to a set sunglasses, or, in general, anything that would require being outside of the sunlight. Recently, the International Space Station, ISS, had been duplicated so that there would be easy travel between the Milky Way and Andromeda. There was more than one time that Malachi had thought that moving to another galaxy would improve their life. With this thought, however, Malachi also knew, with his luck, that he would find out that Andromeda had 2 or more suns. As Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, and Angel walked out of the store, they were about to head towards a poorly lit area of the parking lot when Ronnie had nearly tripped over something. As first Ron had thought that perhaps it was a stick as it was light enough that it flipped across the black top. Then, as they approached it again, Eddie bent over to pick it up. With it now in his hands, Eddie quickly identified the item. "It's a fishing pole." "A fishing pole," Ronnie repeated. Taking a closer look at the rod within Eddie's hand, Ron immediately pointed at it. "That's Larry's fishing pole." "That can't be," Malachi interrupted. Larry left almost. As Malachi turned to look at Ronnie, he had simultaneously noticed Larry's truck alone in the nearly empty lot behind him. "Larry hasn't left yet. I wonder what's going on." With the situation at hand, Malachi had instantly felt that something was wrong as chills had also began to go down his spine. "What's the chance of something really happening?" Angel asked. "Craig is a small community as opposed to Grand Junction anyhow, and everyone seems to like him." With this said, Malachi turned and looked at Angel. "Yeah. You're right. But I still feel like that something is wrong," Malachi continued as he looked at the pole in Eddie's hand. Then, as Eddie set the fishing pole back onto the ground, the four of them continued on their way to the dark and safe haven within the parking lot. Then, moments later, they were headed home.
And is now going to undoubtedly fall into North Korea's hands as a result. Now, in local news, Craig's highs for the day is expected to reach up to 85 degrees, winds out of the south at approximately 5 knots with gusts up to 15 knots. Local sheriff deputies, early this morning, were called to a scene, just outside of Maybell, where the body of Police Chief Larry Wallace was found by children preparing to board their school bus. At this time, the Moffat County Sheriff's Department has no further statements into the death.
This incident is going to hurt this community very badly. Larry Wallace had been, for many years, an outstanding member of this community. He's been an excellent chief for this police department for over 20 years with a total of over 30 years of service to this police department. With his extensive work history, he has also been very much like a best friend and father figure to many people in and around Craig.
Tony St. John said outside of his home this morning. And, he will be missed very much.
We're all gonna miss him.
20-year-old, Ronnie DeClue, said outside of his home this morning.
He's been there for my family on many of our most important occasions, including my wedding, my brother's wedding, and my parents' wedding several years ago.
He'll never be forgotten.
24-year-old Malachi DeClue added as he stood beside his brother. An autopsy is expected to be done later this evening in hopes of finding the cause of death. Authorities are asking that if anyone has any information into the death of Larry Wallace to please call the Moffat County Sheriff's Department or the Craig Police Department at 1-970-555-8111. Now, back to your continuous non-stop country music CGMC 103.5.
Just as the CCMG news crew was packing themselves back into their van, Sheriff Jeff Moran pulled into the drive. "Hey guys," Jeff said as he walked up the steps leading to the front door, "I hear that you guys wanted to talk to me." "Yeah. We do," Eddie said as he opened the door for Jeff to come in. Then, just as she stormed door closed behind Jeff, Eddie led him into the kitchen. "Mr. Moran. I don't know if anything that we know about Larry Wallace and last night will help or not," but we saw Larry about 10 o'clock last night. Well, who all was with you? Jeff asked. All three of us. Malachi cut in, and our cousin that's sleeping downstairs right now. All right. Then, as Jeff paused for a moment, he dug out a small notebook and a pen. What's your cousin's name? Angel. Angel Coleman. Eddie answered. And then you, Malachi, and Ronnie. Right? Yes sir, Eddie said as he poured Jeff, Malachi, Ronnie, and himself coffee. Okay. Where did you guys see him? At Kmart. Just after 10 o'clock last night. As Eddie said this, Jeff Moran immediately made eye contact with Eddie as he stopped writing. He was boasting about a new fishing rod that he had just thought. Then, maybe 20 minutes later, we walked out of Kmart and found that very fishing rod laying on the parking lot, and his truck was left there also. We didn't see Larry anywhere. Do you remember seeing anyone else specific in the store last night that might have seen something? Honestly, Jeff, we were so wrapped up in looking at the different games last night in the store that I couldn't honestly say rather if Santa Claus passed us or not. Eddie answered truthfully. Okay. What did you do with the fishing rod? Well, Ronnie accidentally tripped over it. We didn't see it that well in the dark, then I bent over and picked it up. That's when we realized that it was the same pole that Larry had bought. And then, Malachi interrupted, that's when I noticed that Larry's truck was still there. And then this morning, when we first heard that he was reported missing, when my wife came home from work, that's when we called the sheriff's department. Well guys, Jeff said as he took his last sip of coffee, I really appreciate you guys. Suddenly, as Jeff looked out the corner of his eye, Angel walked into the kitchen. Who's this? This is our cousin Angel. Ronnie answered. Angel was, still to this point, very tired and nearly asleep as he had only come upstairs for a cup of water. In fact, Angel didn't even respond as Ronnie introduced him to Jeff. Hey Angel. My name is Jeff. Can I please talk with you for a moment? Yeah. Sure. The 14-year-old said as it appeared that he might fall back to sleep while standing. Angel was small for his age. Perhaps only about 90 to 100 pounds. Walking around, without a shirt on, as he was now, he could have easily passed for a 10-year-old as there were no signs of hair growth under his armpits, face, chest, nor lower belly. With the low body weight, however, he also was obviously clean and well-groomed as he took a seat next to the sheriff. Well Angel. Your cousin here tells me that you guys saw something odd last night. I was wondering if you might be able to tell me your version. Well. Angel started, we saw Larry in Kmart last night. Angel had gone on and on as he described the events of the night before. Through his version, the only difference was the period of time that Malachi, Ronnie, and Eddie were looking at the games, and then Angel says that he was looking at the hoverboards. Okay guys, Jeff said as he stood up. I'm gonna get going now. Thank you guys for calling us. Now, if you remember any other details, please call us. Alright? Will do, Eddie said as he reached out to shake Jeff's hand. Then, as he was shaking Jeff's hand, he had also reached out, with his other hand, to pull Angel close to himself as the teen began to rock within his chair after dozing off. Alright guys. Jeff announced as he began to head towards the steps, leading to the front door, I'll see y'all later. Also, Jeff said, as he quickly looked back again before leaving the kitchen, I think that perhaps you should take Angel back to bed. Then, with a light chuckle, he continued his descent down the steps. Hey Daddy. Daniel's making faces at me, Justin said as he had simultaneously thrown a French fry back at his older brother. You guys. Turning herself around, in her seat, so that she could face her children, Christina lightly grasped her oldest son's leg as she spoke. Daniel and Justin. If you guys can't just sit, relax, and enjoy the ride, then we'll pull over and spank you. Do you understand me? Yes, Daniel hissed and then pushed himself deep into the padded seat. Then, with Daniel's response, Justin held another fry high, above his head, without even thinking about the fact that his mom was right there watching. Justin. Put that down. You do not throw anything in this car. Understand? Yes, Justin snapped and then crossed his arms as he pouted. Justin's voice had startled his two younger brothers that were fast asleep. Jason, whom had only opened his eyes, without much care to the volume of his older brothers, began to just stare out the back seat window, of the passenger side of the car, as he continued to lay on the armrest of the door. Beside Jason was his little infant brother, Joshua, that had momentarily began to cry at Justin's outburst. Ordinarily long family drives were enjoyed by the McKim children. Today, however, after nearly 10 hours of being crammed into the back seat, like sardines, tempers had began to flare as hunger and boredom had began to set in. Creating more stress to the situation, it was downpouring, causing the visibility to only be good up to about 20 feet. With this, Randy wasn't able to get more than 20 miles per hour without the car in front of them suddenly flashing its brake lights. It was normal for Randy and Christina, during the summer months, to make a weekend trip somewhere. One weekend would be just camping out in the woods, while, in another weekend, they would go visit famous museums, or just take a long drive to see the countryside. On this particular day, they had decided to go see the Mile High Flea Market in Denver. Something that they had heard about several times in the past. Everything was going smooth until they had exited the Eisenhower Tunnel on their way back towards their home in Hayden. Small community about halfway between Craig and Steamboat Springs. "Honey, I can't see a thing through this rain," Randy exclaimed as he put the windshield wipers on their highest setting. Then, even though the wipers were moving faster than what the eye could keep up with, the windshield appeared as though someone was dumping buckets of water directly onto the glass, almost hiding the brightness of the brake lights ahead of them. "Honey, please don't drive so close to that car. It's too hard to see it," Christina said. "But Christina, I can't see the road. I have to follow their tail lights," Randy responded as he saw his wife holding on tightly to both the dashboard and the old shit handle. After almost 10 years of marriage to Randy, the little handle, attached to the upper trim in the front passenger's seat, had quickly gotten the nickname old shit handle. Periodically Christina would then cover her face with both hands as the silver-colored truck, in front of them, would unexpectedly hit its brakes. Suddenly, just as they were coming out of Steamboat Springs, that silver truck seemed to come to an instant stop just after swerving sharply to the right. All along the right side of the road was the steep base of mountain, while all along the left side of the road, the side without any shoulder, was all of at least a 200-foot drop-off. Going too fast to prevent hitting the truck, Randy quickly swerved sharply to the left as he had also hit the brakes. As the brakes instantly locked up, Randy had also lost control of the steering as they headed directly to the edge of the blacktop. Then, as the car had almost stopped, with the front tires hanging over the edge, Randy nor Christina had enough time to even consider exiting the vehicles before they found themselves, front bumper first, heading straight down. Opening up his eyes, he began to look around himself, through the darkness, and trying his best to identify his surroundings with his hands. Moving his arms and legs, he felt a lot of pain, however, he had full mobility of his entire body. With his hands, he felt what he thought might be Daniel and then, seconds later, knew for a fact that it was Daniel by a pin, on his oldest brother's shirt. "Daniel. It's dark in here." His brother wouldn't respond. What he had also just now noticed, however, is that he could smell the rain that he could hear pouring onto the body of his family's car. With this, he could also smell the familiar scent of gasoline. Feeling, with his hands, Jason carefully searched the length of his brother's body, so that he could be closer to his ear. Then, as his right hand found Daniel's month, he pulled himself closer to his brother's head. "Daniel. Let's get out of the car." With his nose up to Daniel's mouth, Jason could smell the rich smell of blood. As he lightly wrapped his hands around the circumference of his brother's head, he found what felt like a sharp object sticking out of the back of Daniel's neck. "Is anybody in there?" Jason heard a man's voice yelling from outside of the car. "Help me," Jason yelled loudly. "Oh my God. Someone is alive in there. It sounds like a kid." The man's voice sounded again. This was the worst downpour that Joe Chrisleib had ever seen in his life. Then, as the car that he had been following suddenly took a dive off of the steep ledge on the south edge of Interstate 40, he quickly jumped out of his truck to look below. What he had seen, from the road, was a balled-up mass of metal that nobody could have ever survived. As Joe had reached the vehicle, about 275 feet below, he could see almost a river of blood as it drained out of the back seat door. This drainage was about the thickness of a pencil before mixing with the rain that still poured. Then, as he heard a child's cry, he was instantly shocked. "I need help down here. There is a survivor." The man continued to yell towards the top. Walking right up to the car's door, the door of which had the thick stream of blood pouring out of it, Joe had tried to find a way to enter the car. At least enough to pull out the trapped child that he could hear. "Hey kid. What's your name?" "Jason. Jason McKim." The child's voice said. Then, Joe could hear the kid begin to cry. "Hey Jason. Just relax buddy. My name is Joe and I'm gonna get you out of there. Understand me?" "Yeah. But," Jason continued through tears, "I can't wake up my brothers or my parents." "Oh no," Joe thought to himself as he pulled out his cell phone from his pocket. Looking at the digital face of the wireless device, he could see that he couldn't get any signal from his location. "It's alright Jason. I just want you to keep talking to me. You hear me buddy?" "Yeah. I hear ya," the child answered. "My brother's head and neck feels like something is wrong." "Hey Jason." "Yeah? How about you just pay attention to me? Alright?" With his question, the sudden sound of a siren blared out and echoed off of the walls of the surrounding mountain. "Okay." Though Jason's voice was quiet, Joe knew that so long as the kid was talking that the kid was also breathing and that his heart was beating. This to Joe, was important. "Hey Jason." Joe called out loudly as he saw other people coming down from the ledge up above. "There are more people coming down to help you get out of there." "Okay Jason?" "Okay." While Joe sat close to the shattered rear window of the car, he carefully wedged his fingers as far as he could into the cab, feeling for anything that may feel like the child that he was talking to. "Hey Jason." "Yeah?" "I'm reaching my hand inside of the car. Lay still and try to feel my hand moving around." As he said this he could feel what felt like a body, in fact had known that it was a body of another child as he glided his hand over the open mouth, touching its teeth. Then suddenly, felt a small hand grab a hold of his hand. "I found your hand," Jason cried as he now held onto Joe's hand with both of his own hands. "Alright buddy. Just hold on to me while we continue to talk. Also, some other people are here too." "Okay. Hi there," a woman said as she reached Joe's side with a large medic box. The woman was also wearing an EMT ambulance coat. "My name is Chris Larson and I'm here to help." "Well ma'am. That's a good thing. There is a child still alive in here and I've got him holding my hand. His name is Jason," Joe continued. "Okay great." The woman answered and then paused as she took in the full picture of the accident. With this, she too noticed the stream of blood. "Well do me a favor and keep holding his hand. That will keep him relaxed while we find a way to get him out." This woman was very short-statured and a little heavy-set as she glanced towards the top of the cliff. Raising a hand radio to her mouth, she signaled for help. "R3 to R1. Go ahead R3. We need the jaws of life down here. We have a trapped survivor. 10 to 4 R3. Stand by."
For local news this afternoon, there was a deadly car accident earlier today killing 2 adults and 3 young children just west of Steamboat on Interstate 40. It is also reported, however, that a young child survived this accident as he was trapped within the mangled vehicle with his siblings and parents. This child remained trapped, within the car, for over 3 hours as rescuers fought to free.
"Hey Malachi and Ronnie. You guys hear this on the radio?" Eddie said as Nicole and himself both sat at the table for breakfast. This kid was trapped in a car with his dead siblings and parents for over 3 hours. L was driving behind them when their car suddenly skidded off of the edge in the rain. Then, for the majority of that 3 hours, I held the child's hand and talked to him. 33-year-old Joseph Chris Lieb said as he reached the top of the steep cliff. My God, Eddie gasped, I feel sorry for that kid. Well yeah, Nicole agreed as she covered her mouth, out of shock, I can't believe it. For over 3 hours. Ronnie interrupted as he had also walked into the kitchen with Malachi. I wonder if there's anything that we can do to help out? Eddie asked as he looked at Nicole. For donations or anything that you can do to offer help to this child, you are being asked to contact either your local police department or sheriff's department. Or, you can call CCMC radio at. Well, there's the answer to your question, Malachi said just as the news segment came to an end. Call the police department. Good morning, Kim. Nicole said as she climbed in, behind the wheel, the following morning. Do we have any welfare checks today? Nope, not today. Kim answered as he buckled himself in. It had been routine, as Nicole's shift began, for Kim to come pick her up directly from her home. This was for 2 reasons. One, was because of the lack of space in the police department parking lot, and the second reason is because Malachi needed to have their Hummer at home just in case of an emergency. Everyone is still in shock over Larry's death. Hey Kim. Yeah? Did you hear about that accident yesterday morning outside of Steamboat Springs? Asking this question, Nicole momentarily took her eyes off of the road as she looked at her partner. Yeah. In fact, there is a collection box at the station to help support the kid. I feel sorry for that little tiger. Not only does he get trapped inside of that car with his dead siblings and parents, but then he winds up without any next of kin or. That accident orphaned that boy. Nicole interrupted. Hell yeah. He is homeless. He's at the FIA here in Craig right now. Suddenly, just as the words came out of Kim's mouth, Nicole quickly made a sharp left-hand turn, onto a road directly behind Safeway. What are you doing, Nicole? Kim. I don't know why, but I've got to do this. Do what? Kim requested as he rechecked his seat belt and then grabbed a hold of the dashboard. Something tells me that we've got to bring that child home. Can you realistically take in another child? Kim asked as he slightly shifted his body to face Nicole. I mean, you and Malachi have Lucifer, Ronnie and Belinda have Macaulay and Dawn D, and then you've got Eddie and Angel. Are you guys gonna have space for another? Turning to face Kim, just as they pulled into the FIA parking lot, Nicole put the patrol car into park. I know that our hearts have plenty of space. With that in mind, I think that we'll adjust to another body in the home. Then, with that said, Nicole stepped out of the car and then paused as she looked back at her partner. Please come with me, Kim. Walking into the main office, an elderly woman was sitting at a desk with a pair of glasses that seemed to sit on the end of her nose. As Nicole and Kim approached the desk, the older lady looked up, from a computer. Well, hello. How may I help you officers this morning? Ah yes. My name is Nicole DeClue and I'm here in regards to the young boy that survived yesterday's accident outside of Steamboat. Alright. What would you like to donate for this child? My home. My family. And our hearts, Nicole said point blank. The direct answer had caught the elderly woman and Kim off guard. Well gee. The older woman said as she set one hand on her chest. They said that this moment would come fast, but I never guessed this fast. So, Nicole continued. I can do this, right? Well, of course, dear. All that we need is for you to fill out this form. As she spoke, she handed a packet of papers of at least 50 pages, and then picked up the phone, next to her, as she began to dial an extension number. Ah yeah, Dorothy. We've got a home for Jason. Would you please bring him into the main lobby? After the question, Nicole seemed to have held her breath until the women began to speak again. With this weight, Nicole had now known the name of the child that was gonna soon be part of the family. Ah yeah. I'm still here. About 5 minutes, great. Okay, we'll see you in a moment. Then, after another moment of silence, the women hung up the phone. Well. Nicole, right? Yes, ma'am. Alright. Jason is on his way here. Real quickly, however, I need you to fill out at least the first 3 pages of this packet. This will be for the sake of doing a home visit by one of our social workers so that we'll know how things are working out for Jason and the rest of the family. Okay? Then, as she handed a yellow envelope to Nicole, personal photos. All the photos that we could find in his family's home, that is, also. In a storage unit, here in Craig, we've put together most of his clothes from his home along with most of his toys. In this envelope is the key for that storage unit. Suddenly, mid-sentence, the front door of the FIA opened as a child raced into the building. Oh, hi Dorothy. Hello Margaret. Well, here's the little monster, Dorothy said. This woman was maybe about 40 years old as the child was 3 and full of energy. Well, Mrs. Declue, Margaret announced, here's Jason. Then, as Margaret stood up from the desk, she knelt down to pick up the tyke that had immediately began to crawl around on the floor. Acting as though he was a puppy. Hey Jason. This lady here is named Mrs. Declue. She wants you to live with her and her family. Do you think that we could do that? Yeah, Jason said as he momentarily calmed down. Hi Jason. Nicole started as she reached her arms out to the young boy. My name is Nicole. I was wondering if you would like to come live with me. Live with you until my family comes home? Jason asked with a smile on his face. With this question, Nicole immediately looked back to Margaret. Jason doesn't understand Nicole, Margaret said as she watched the child crawl up into Nicole's arms. He's too young to understand the difference in life and death. Hello, Malachi said as he picked the cell phone up off of his dresser. Hi honey, Nicole said shortly after leaving the FIA. As her and Kim left the FIA with Jason, they decided to head to the police department so that they could find a replacement for Nicole for the day and also to arrange for introducing the famed 3-year-old survivor to the rest of the family. I would like you to do me a favor and wake everyone up. Wake everyone up? Malachi questioned. Why? What's going on, Nicole? Yawning, Malachi nearly dropped the wireless device as he continued to speak to his wife. I've got an important surprise, honey. I'm taking the rest of the day off of work and coming home. Nicole, Malachi said as he looked at his watch, you just went to work. Then, as he laid down with his left hand to his forehead, he continued, but yes, for you, I'll wake everyone up. I'd really appreciate it, honey. I think that you'll be happy too, Nicole finished and then, after telling her husband that she loved him, hung up as she continued to wait for her replacement. It was only about a half hour later that she had pulled into the drive. Then, as she unloaded herself, Jason, and all of the paperwork that went along with him, she headed in through the front door with Jason leading the way as he held tightly onto her right index finger. As she stepped into the entryway, there wasn't any sign of anyone being awake. Hey Nicole. We're in the kitchen, honey. Malachi called out from the table. After Nicole had called from the police department, Malachi had immediately brewed a whole pot of coffee knowing that it would all be consumed in a short period of time. Then, just as he was about to take a sip out of his hot cup, he looked up to see Nicole holding a child other than their own. Who is this? Eddie asked as he stood in front of the coffee maker. All at once, Ronnie and Belinda had also looked towards Nicole. Guys, Nicole said. This here is Jason McKim. He is the little boy that was trapped inside of the car with his family yesterday. Most of what else Nicole continued to say was sorta blocked out as the memory of the radio broadcast the day before began to run through their minds. With this was a gruesome image of a young child being trapped within a vehicle with their dead siblings and parents for a long time, so Jason is now a part of our family, guys. At first Malachi didn't really know what to say. He knew that everyone wanted to take part in helping the child. He didn't anticipate that it would come down to the kid moving in with them, yet, with those gruesome images Malachi had almost instantly wanted to reach out and hug the kid. On top of this, so did everyone else as Eddie immediately knelt down on the kitchen floor and opened up his arms to the tyke. This was a strange feeling to Eddie as he knelt down to the floor. As he looked into the kid's eyes, he had also realized the innocence within the blue pearls that stared back at him. The knowledge of the events within Jason's life, over the last couple of days, had almost crippling effects to Eddie's emotions. Then, as Eddie tightly wrapped his arms around the child, he could feel the body of the 3-year-old seem to melt into his arms. With this, a single tear rolled down Eddie's cheek. Moments later, Eddie stood up with Jason still in his arms. Then, as Eddie turned to face Malachi, Ronnie, and Belinda, he reintroduced him. "Guys. This is Jason." On May 31st of 2023, Eddie's birthday, Eddie, Malachi, Lucifer, Ronnie, Nicole, Belinda, Angel, Macaulay, Dawn D., and Jason, all walked into the Moffat County Courthouse with all of the paperwork, for Jason's adoption, in hand. It was decided, over the past 2 weeks that Jason had lived in the home, that the full custody adoption should be given to Eddie. This was for many reasons, however, the largest 2 reasons was that the entire issue came to them when Eddie's good-natured heart had thought of the idea of intervening with the orphaned child, and then the fact that Eddie was an excellent role model as a parent by how well that he had been dealing with Lucifer, Macaulay, and Dawn D. "Well. Very well then," the judge said as he signed the packet of papers and then made another copy for Eddie, "with this form here." The judge continued as he pulled out another form. "This will officially make Jason's full name, Jason Eric Yeesh, and you, sir, are now the legal father to Jason Eric Yeesh now. Considering the situation or the car accident survived, I am ordering that Jason should be seen by a psychologist, of your choice, at the cost of Moffat County. Understand, sir?" "Yes. I do understand, Judge," Eddie responded. "Is there any amount of years that you want this counseling to continue?" "Well, Mr. Yeesh, the psychologist determines this. If you would like, however, I can order this to continue until a certain amount of time." "Well, I don't know if that will be necessary, Judge. I just want to prepare for, ahead of time, what would be best for Jason." "Well, Mr. Yeesh." Standing up from his seat, the judge, Honorable Nicholas Lombros, walked around his podium and took Eddie's hand up in his own. "It seems to me that you're gonna be an excellent parent. If you should need any assistance, of any kind, you just contact me." Pulling a business card out of his pocket, he handed it to Eddie. "There is the number here to the courthouse and then my cell phone." "Thank you very much, sir," Eddie said and then bent forward to pick his son up off of the floor. "We're all done, buddy." "We're all done already?" Jason asked as properly as he could and then pushed his upper body away from his new father. "Is my last name Yeesh now?" "Yep. Your full name is now Jason Eric Yeesh." Then, after about another 5 minutes, everyone left the courthouse and then went over to Pizza Hut while a dark overcast loomed over northwest Colorado. It wasn't until about the 12th or 13th of June, Lucifer's and Jason's 4th birthdays, that some form of normalcy had become understood within the house. The entire process, involving Jason, had surprised Marie, Karina, David, Patty, and Bill. At the same time, however, they had each felt that Eddie made the right choice for both himself and the young child. "So what's your wish for your birthday, Jason?" Eddie asked just as the kid blew out his candles. So that the children wouldn't feel any sort of resentment, they had individually celebrated their birthdays. Lucifer's on June 12th and then Jason's on the 13th. The following day, the 14th, everyone would go to the city park to celebrate. "I miss my mommy and my daddy. And Daniel, Joshua, and Justin." The words should have been expected before too much longer. With the words, however, Eddie had almost become choked up realizing, for the first time since the accident, that his adopted son Jason was hurting deep inside, as he continued to expect something to happen that was simply just not gonna happen. Deciding that it would be best, for Jason, Eddie just made a mental note of the situation so that he could address the incident to Jason's psychologist. Beyond the birthdays, life had gone back to normal as Malachi, Nicole, and Eddie prepared their children for school the following year. 3 months after their 5th birthdays. It was about the beginning of September of 2024 when Malachi, Eddie, and Nicole had suddenly become worried, at the last second, about rather if they were gonna have everything that they would need for their kids by the 15th. "Mom. We've never had to do this before," Malachi pleaded on the phone. "Malachi. Just make sure, right now, that you have backpacks for the kids, crayons, some colored construction paper, Elmer's glue, scissors, and lined writing paper. Then, when you take the boys into school, for registration, the children's teacher will give you a list of things that the kids will need. Something that might be easier is to just wait until the night of the first day. That way you'll have an exact list of what you'll need. Well, Mom. I'm sorry about all of the confusion. Malachi. Don't be crazy, this is yours, Eddie's, and Nicole's first time. It's better to ask questions rather than to find out the hard way, Karina said. Then, as Karina looked at her watch, she realized that it was time for a cake to come out of the oven. Well, son. You guys call back later and let me know what you've decided about the kids' school supplies. Also, if you guys would prefer, I can go with you guys. Well, okay, Mom. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. We'll let you know what we decide. Alright, Malachi. I love you, honey. Talk to you later. Seconds later, the phone went dead. Folding the door closed of the phone, Malachi looked to Eddie and Nicole. Well, we can either go buy a list of stuff that Mom just gave me, we can wait till the kids' first day of school, when their teachers will give us a list, or we can call my mom back, when we're ready, and then she'll go with us. In the end, with all of the options, they chose to just wait until they had that list from their teachers. Well, both of the kids seemed to be well ready for school. Lloyd said as he watched Lucifer and Jason try on some brand new school clothes. They are both considered to be geniuses compared to most kids their own age. Sterling said as he watched Jason and Lucifer tie their shoes. Sterling. You sound like that you have some sort of doubt in your voice about something. What's wrong? Lloyd asked as he walked away from Lucifer's side and then stood beside Sterling as he watched Jason closely. You know, Lloyd. I can't put a finger on it, but it's like... Oh, I don't know. Jason is holding a lot of stress inside. What are you talking about, Sterling? Jason asked with a sudden sound of anger. Actually, just as Jason was questioning Sterling's word, Lloyd could then see exactly what was bothering Sterling. An extremely negative buildup of demeanor within Jason. Then, as Lloyd took a real close look at Jason's face, he could see that the outburst had come in like a wave. In one instant Jason was extremely angry. Within the very next second he had completely overlooked whatever it was that made him upset. But, James said as he came into the kids' bedroom. These waves are coming more and more frequently. And I guess you could say that the tide is staying high anytime that Jason comes around Nicole. It's like he really does love this family. It's obvious that he also misses his biological family, and it's this that causes these waves and then high tide when Nicole's around. In other words, Lloyd said, what small signs, that we see now, is gonna end up being let out towards Nicole when she's most vulnerable alone. As to this point, about 3 years after Angel had become a member of the household, Sterling, James, and Lloyd, had often spent time wondering when, where, or why they recognized Angel. Nevertheless, however, he never showed any reason, within the home, to not be loved and trusted. In fact, Angel had often interacted with both Jason and Lucifer, and had often helped out with Macaulay and Don D. Hey Jason. What do you want, Sterling? Jason responded. I just wanted to let you know that we love you and that you don't have to be angry at us. With this, Lloyd, James, and Sterling all stared at Jason. I know. Jason responded in a quieter tone. And I'm sorry, guys. The 5-year-old said. Even Jason, to himself, couldn't make any sense of waves of anger that flowed through him at times. What he did know, however, is that he truly did regret some of the things that came out of his mouth. He wouldn't ever intend harm. It just happened. Good morning, boys and girls and parents. My name is Mr. Stacy and I'll be your kindergarten teacher this year. Now for you parents that are here today, I need you to understand, especially if this is your first time, that the Sunset Elementary School does have rules in regards to attendance, completion of homework assignments, and of course no fighting. These are issues that will be dealt with on an individual basis with the student, and on the home front. Now, today is gonna be only a couple of hours. After today, classes will be from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3:15 in the afternoon. Any questions? Not really wanting to put himself under the spotlight, Eddie dared himself to raise his hand. He wanted to know if he was gonna hand out a list of things that each student needed. Sir. Eddie finally said, only partially raising his hand. Yes, Mr. Yeesh. I was just wondering if you would have a list of items that the kids would need for school? In fact, Mr. Yeesh, yes I do. Thanks for saying something, I would have probably forgotten to hand them out. The teacher explained and then immediately picked up a stack of papers, out of a drawer, and then began to hand them out to everyone. After about the fifth form that he had handed out, a young lady that was holding her son's hand spoke up. Mr. Stacy. Is there any way that we can keep some form of written communication between you, as the teacher, and us parents? Actually, Mrs. Russell, yes there is. If you log on to www.sunset.stacy.com, you can communicate directly with me. When it asks for a password, enter your child's last 4 digits of his or her social security number. Then, just moments after the teacher had explained this way of communication, her son, Tom, had suddenly ran away from her side and then hid behind Lucifer. Tommy. Calm down. The lady said as she had missed when she tried to grab a hold of his arm. Lucifer seemed to be amused by the horseplay and then lightly wrapped his arms around his new peer. What's your name? Tom asked as he looked at his capture. Mid-sentence, Tommy had began to whisper into Lucifer's ear. As he did so, he had peered at the next student that had walked in with him. Hello. Hi. Jason responded and then lightly waved back at Tom. At this, Tommy smiled back at Jason. My name is Lucifer. What's yours? My name is Tommy. You wanna play for a while? Sure. Lucifer answered. Then, as Lucifer looked over at Jason, he continued. Let's let my cousin play with us too. His name is Jason. Alright. Then, as Tommy looked towards Jason, come on Jason, come and play with us, Tommy continued to whisper. Simultaneously, as Eddie heard the Russell child call his son's name, he let go of his son and then patted him on the back, okaying the way for his son to leave his side. Hey Jason, Eddie said as he leaned forward. You guys play quietly. Okay? Alright, we will. Jason answered, and then went and sat down on the floor beside Lucifer and Tommy. The conversations between the teacher and the parents had lasted about an additional hour and a half. Most of this conversation was in regards to the many questions that the individual parents had for the teacher, and then some of the parents got into conversations among themselves. In fact, Mrs. Russell had gotten into a deep conversation with Malachi, Eddie, and Nicole. It had turned out that Eddie, Malachi, Mrs. Russell, and Lloyd Bruce all were in the same class together. During middle school, Mrs. Russell had moved out of the community with her parents, and then returned years later when she was pregnant with Tommy. Hey Lucifer. Tommy spoke up, do you think that maybe sometime, in the future, that we could spend the night at each other's house? While asking the question, Tommy was also trying to put crayons down the front of both Lucifer's and Jason's shirt. I don't know why not. I don't think that our parents would have a problem with it. Lucifer answered just as he suddenly pulled up the front of Tommy's shirt and pulled out a handful of crayons, that both himself and Jason shoved down into this shirt in the first place. Then, as he quickly separated the handful of crayons between him and Jason, they both, once again, dumped them into his shirt again. At this, Tommy responded by lifting up the front of Jason's and Lucifer's shirt, and placing his hand on both of their bellies as he was about to tickle both of them, when he realized that Lucifer's stomach was extremely cold feeling. Yo dude, Tommy gasped as he pulled his hand out of Jason's shirt. Why does your belly feel so cold? After he finished his question, he placed his other hand beside the one that he already had on Lucifer's belly, as if to assist in warming his friend up with his own body heat. Ah. I have always been cooler than most people, Lucifer said and then smiled back at Jason. In response, both Tommy and Jason smiled back. As Lucifer allowed his new friend to keep his hands on his stomach, he continued. I don't know 100% why my body is always cold. Everyone in my family is the same way except for Jason. As Lucifer and Tommy continued to sit on the floor, Jason stood up. Hey Jason. Come here. Tommy called out, thinking that Jason was feeling left out. Then, as Jason stood beside Tommy, Tom, once again put his hand up Jason's shirt. Moments later, Tommy had both of his hands on Jason's belly. Your belly feels warm compared to Lucifer's. Then, just as Lucifer was standing up, Tommy poked Jason in the belly button with his right index finger. Looking around real quickly, wondering why Lucifer had stood up, he found that the parents' discussion, with their teacher, was now coming to an end. "Hey Daddy," Lucifer said as he began to pull on Malachi's hand. "Do you think that maybe sometime that Tommy could spend the night with us?" "Well, Lucifer, that's all right with me if it's okay with his mother," Malachi said as he looked around at Nicole and at Mrs. Russell. "It's all right with me, but not tonight though. We're gonna be a little busy for the next few days," Mrs. Russell announced. Moments later, as all the children were back with their individual parents, out of the school and headed back to their vehicles. "Well," Eddie said as they were walking out of the building, "I think that all of our questions are answered now." "Yeah. Until Lucifer turns 13 anyhow." Then, as he looked at his wife, just as her, Eddie, and Jason were getting into their yellow Hummer. "Well, then it'll be homeschooling, just as it was for you, Ronnie, and Eddie," Nicole said as she winked at her husband. That first year of school for Lucifer and Jason went by without incident. Also, during that school season, the friendship between Lucifer, Jason, and Tommy had grown along the way. In fact, as the school season came to an end in May of 2025, Tommy was invited to both Lucifer's birthdays and Jason's birthday on the 12th and 13th of June, and vice versa as Tommy's birthday was on June 14th. 3 days in a row. Eddie though out loud. Who would have thought that that would be possible? This year, especially now that there were 3 birthdays in a row, back to back, they decided that they would do the birthdays all at the DeCluse home. Including Tommy's. Over that period of time, Mr. and Mrs. Russell had tried to convince themselves that they were not imposing on the DeCluse home, however they too were invited. "Hey Eddie. Since today is Jason's birthday, yesterday was Lucifer's, and then tomorrow is Tom's. What would you think about buying dogs for the kids? We can even buy Angel one as well." As Malachi finished his question, Spud loudly barked with what looked like a smile on his face. Immediately Malachi pet the dog on top of the head. "Well, what do you think that the Russells would say about the idea? We've got 2. Actually," Malachi interrupted. "The Russells came up with the idea. I said that I would ask you first." As Malachi finished his sentence, he lowered his arms to where Spud could walk onto Eddie's lap. "You know, that's gonna be 5 dogs all under one roof, Malachi," Eddie said as he thought about what Malachi was implying. "Yeah. I think that we can handle it. If we neuter and spay each one of them," Eddie said. "ARF." Spud snapped loudly, almost biting the tip of Eddie's nose. Immediately Eddie handed the dog back to Malachi. "Oh. Poor Spud." Malachi mimicked as he rubbed his dog beside his ears. "Don't worry. We won't cut off your—" "Hey Dad." Lucifer interrupted. "Tommy got a cut on his finger, can we have a few band-aids?" "Yeah. You can." Malachi answered his son and then set the dog down to the floor as he stood up. Instantly Spud went to Eddie's feet, barked real loud again, and then turned, but towards Eddie, and then began to dig, with his hind feet, like as if he was trying to bury Eddie's feet. Unfortunately, for the dog, they were all standing in the kitchen. Leading Lucifer and Tommy into the restroom, Malachi opened up the medicine cabinet and then handed his son a box of brand new band-aids. "Here you go, buddy," Malachi said, and then, as he handed the box to his son, looked at Tommy as he saw a run of blood on the ring finger of Tommy's right hand. As Malachi continued to stare at Tommy's hand, he had suddenly realized that his son had never harvested before. "Lucifer." Malachi used his ESP to communicate with his son. "Yeah?" Using his ESP, he answered his father as he looked up to him. "Real quickly, I want you to take a deep sniff of the blood on Tom's hand." At first Lucifer thought that his dad was pulling his leg, so nothing less though, he followed his father's instructions, took a deep sniff, while Tommy made a few odd looks at his friend, and then Lucifer looked back to his father with an odd look on his face. "Now Dad." Lucifer started with ESP, "Why would you have me?" In mid-thought, Lucifer instantly turned his head back towards his friend. "Lucifer. You two go play in your bedroom. Take the box with you," Malachi urged. "Then, when you guys are done, come out to the living room. We all have to go get your big birthday presents for you, Jason, and Tommy." Lucifer's first time harvesting took about 20 minutes while Angel and Jason continued to play in the backyard. Then, as they had all, including Tommy's parents, climbed into the Hummers, half in the black Hummer, and then half into Malachi's and Nicole's Hummer. Then, bumper to bumper drove directly to the Safeway mini mall, parked side by side of each other, and then everyone unloaded out of the Hummers and headed into the mall. The total time in the mall's pet store took about 2 hours. But, as they came out of the pet shop, all 4 of the kids, including Angel, Jason, Lucifer, and Tommy, came walking out in style as they each walked out with a puppy on a leash. Bright neon-colored leashes that seemed to glow in the partially overcast skies. Hey Angel. Malachi, Ronnie, and Eddie. Nicole started with ESB. The clouds are gonna clear up soon. You guys better get back into the Hummers. Immediately all 5 of them got back into the vehicles, Angel with his puppy in hand just in time, as just the second that the door latched, it was instantly bright outside. With all 5 of them instantly jumping into the Hummers, while everyone else was still stood outside, the Russell family had weird faces on them as they wondered why they had quickly climbed inside as they did. Barrow, Manook, Kotzebue, Bering, and Spud. Come and get it. Eddie hollered. Ever since they had purchased the additional dogs, any time that Tom had come over to visit, he had brought Kotzebue with him. Usually, whoever happened to be closest to the food at the normal wake-up time, about 9 o'clock at night, would feed the dogs. As Eddie bellowed loudly from the kitchen, he had instantly heard the prancing of 20 different feet coming from every direction throughout the house. All in about another half hour or so, everyone else was soon up and sitting at the table as Nicole was finishing a French toast breakfast. Then, about halfway through the meal, Angel announced that he was gonna take himself and Manook outside and walk for a while. Well Angel. Eddie spoke up. If you're gonna do this, I want you to stay off of the roads. You'll get into trouble by the police if they see you out, without us being with you. Alright? Okay. I'll probably fly away from town or fly to one of the parks. I won't be long, Angel continued, maybe an hour or so. Then, as he threw on a black leather coat of his, he disappeared out into the night. Over the last year or so, Angel had become a very dark person. This was way beyond the fact that his skin complexion was already darker than that of the rest of the family, by his pure Hispanic background as opposed to everyone else's slight mix with Caucasian. Angel had been wearing black jeans, black shirt, black leather boots, a black leather belt, and a black leather coat that appeared to be way too big for him. The main thing that Angel had going for him, that made his appearance extremely appealing to women, is that, even though he was 16 years old now, he could still, to this point in his life, pass for a 10-year-old by his appearance. No facial hair, no armpit hair, no chest hair, nor hair on his belly. He still looked like a cute kid. A cute kid that only stood 5'3" that weighed less than 100 pounds. It was a clear night out, not a cloud in the sky as Angel slowly lifted off of the front yard. Then, as he headed off into the western direction, over the roof of his house, he moved slowly as he held Manook within his arms. Ever since he had killed Larry Wallace, Angel hadn't had any more nightmares or any dreams that involved his grandfather. This is not what this teenager wanted though. He wanted to be close to his grandfather's side. So, in hopes that his grandfather would pay more attention to him, he decided that he would take another wild stab at taking something close to the Decluse's heart. Well Patty, Bill said as he stood up from his easy chair, I think that I'll go play golf tomorrow. It's been nice outside lately. Well then, I think that you should probably go out into the garage and put them in the trunk, honey. Patty responded as she immediately reached over the coffee table and took the remote control from where he was sitting. Nah. That can wait until tomorrow. I'm gonna head off to bed right now. But dear, Patty protested. You've gotta close the garage door anyhow. Therefore you might as well put your clubs and balls in the trunk while you're doing so. Besides, you've gotta stop forgetting to close that door. The neighbor's dogs keep tearing up the trash. Alright, alright, alright. I'll do it right now, Bill said under his breath. Then, even quieter, he continued, it's the raccoons, not the damn dogs. What was that? Patty asked just before she heard the door close. Pushing the mute button, On the remote control, Patty listened carefully just in case her 65-year-old husband were to slip and fall. Patty had often worried about his welfare any time that he was alone. As soon as Bill got into the garage, he had immediately reached up to an upper shelf and pulled his golf bag out of its place, causing it to land loudly onto the concrete floor. Then, as he pulled out his key ring, out of his pocket by its remote control, he pushed the little button with the trunk emblem printed on it, causing the trunk to pop open. Then, grabbing the heavy bag, by its handle, he got it over to the trunk of the car and then put the bag in before carefully slamming the lid shut. Suddenly, just as the trunk was closed, a tennis ball rolled into the garage, bouncing off of the heel of his shoe. Turning around, to look out into the darkness, Bill couldn't see anyone there. "Who's there?" Bill asked as he dared himself to step out into the yard. Seconds later, without seeing or hearing anyone, he decided to turn back around to head in when suddenly he heard a scuffle of feet behind him. Turning around, again, he quickly found himself looking at Angel. "Hey, Angel. What's going on? It's too late to be out. I'm here to have fun with you tonight." Angel interrupted as he walked up to the old man. "Would you please come play with me?" As Angel continued to speak, he put his right hand around David's father's waist and then, with his left hand, held onto Bill's left arm. "I think that David would be happy to know." Now, as Angel walked the older man outside, that his father went with a smile. But, why? Before Bill could finish his question, he quickly found himself to be, perhaps miles, up off of the ground. Lost within the situation, Bill turned his head sharply to the left as he looked deep into the teenager's face. Angel wasn't even looking at Bill. His eyes seemed to be fixed on an object much further ahead. Then, as Bill continued to stare at the side of Angel's very young-looking face, he watched the muscles within his jaw tighten as they were well defined by the light of the moon. Also, until now, Bill never quite realized how perfect Angel's hair was trimmed around his ear. Beyond the extended canines, Angel's face seemed to be an example of perfection. Even with his dark clothes and dark complexion of skin, showing his Hispanic origin. It was perhaps about 2 hours, after Angel had gone out, that he had walked in through the sliding glass door with Manuk in his arms. "Hi Angel," Belinda said as she turned away from the stovetop. "I'm letting Malachi, Eddie, and Ronnie take a break from cooking tonight. We'll have lunch between midnight and 1 if you wanna get washed up." "All right. Thank you," Angel said as he let the puppy down onto the kitchen floor. Then, as he bent forward, he unhooked the leash off of his puppy. "There you go Manuk. Go play." In response, the young German shepherd licked the end of Angel's nose. As Angel stood back up, he quickly headed off to the upstairs restroom. "Hi Angel," Ronnie said as he saw his cousin pass his and Belinda's bedroom. "Did you enjoy your outing?" Ronnie continued just before Angel got to close the door behind himself. "Yeah. It's nice out and fairly warm as well," Angel said and then closed the door behind himself. Then, as he removed his coat, he turned on the bathroom faucet as he began to wash dried up blood off of both forearms. Then, as he was finished, carefully inspected the sleeves of his coat. Just as Angel was about to open the bathroom door, he quickly turned back towards the bathroom mirror as he had forgotten about a streak of blood on his lip, that the canine teeth that the canine had hidden from Belinda as he had walked into the house moments earlier. Then, as he quickly opened his mouth further, to inspect his teeth, he had found himself lucky that he had double-checked as a portion of flesh clung onto the outer edge of his gum line of his upper jaw. As Angel walked back into the kitchen, he had found everyone else to already be seated at the table for lunch as they had been waiting on Angel before eating. "Well guys," Malachi spoke before anyone had a chance to eat, "perhaps before much longer, we'll all go out on a vacation together?" As Malachi paused, Ronnie had opened a jar of baby food to feed Macaulay as Belinda had one for Dawn D. "It's been a while since we've all gone out on a trip away from town." "Hey Malachi," Ronnie interrupted. "I read about this place in Alaska, of which we named Kotzebue after, that is called Kotzebue in Alaska. By what I read about it, it seems to be quite a nice place to go sometime if you wanna consider it for a future trip." "Well," Malachi began to respond, "I think that anywhere right now is good. A trip to the Arctic could be good for us. Not to mention a good change. Eddie interrupted. As Angel sat down and listened, he quickly realized that the guys were engaged in a conversation that he had heard several times before. He had gathered, from prior conversations, that they did in fact actually go on a short vacation to southern Texas. However, in the 3 years that he had lived with the Declus, he hadn't personally seen any vacation trip actually materialize. Now Alaska. Well, Ronnie. Let's, for now anyway, just remember your idea. There are some problems with any vacation with Macaulay and Dondi being as young as they are. Also, we've got to remember that Jason can't fly without help. And nor can Lucifer. Yeah. I didn't think about that. Ronnie responded to his older brother. Then, as he picked his sandwich up off of his plate, he held it with both hands as he then took a large bite out of it. Belinda had made grilled cheese with tomato soup. Each sandwich had contained so much cheese that a string of cheese now hung off of his canines, causing Jason to giggle as he pointed at Ronnie's face. As Angel had also began to find himself in a mess with the cheese, Ronnie, Malachi, and Eddie had all began to point and giggle as well. Well. Belinda spoke up, I guess that there are some good reasons for not wanting canines like you guys have. Don't know, Nicole said with an odd look on her face as she faced her husband. They are very good in bed when you put them to good use. With this said, Angel suddenly covered his mouth as he was caught off guard by the remark. He had accidentally allowed some tomato soup to go down the wrong pipe as he almost laughed at Nicole. You all right, Angel? Eddie asked as he reached over and patted the teen on the back. Yeah. I just couldn't believe what Nicole had said. He responded and then took a drink of orange juice to clear his throat. As Angel had tried to catch his composure, Malachi's cell phone began to ring. That's weird, Malachi said as he pulled his cell phone out of his pocket. What's my grandma Declue doing up at this time? He asked out loud and then opened the flip phone and began to speak. Instantly Ronnie knew that something was wrong. He knew that something was wrong before his brother's words confirmed it. All at once, everyone's attention was on the words of the one-way conversation. Then, after about a 10-minute conversation, Malachi stood up from the table. Grandpa Declue is missing. He went out to the garage a couple of hours ago and then disappeared. My parents are on their way to our grandma's house right now. Then, as Malachi looked at his watch, he saw that it was about 12:30, just after midnight.